everybody. Welcome to List Formatting Magic. Let's get going here. So, my name is Chris Kent. I'm the Office 365 Practice Lead for DMI, and I'm a Microsoft MVP in Office Development. A couple of fun facts about me. I've got 3 kids. They're all school age, and they're doing virtual school via Microsoft Teams right now. So if you hear them in the background, sorry about that. I've got 1 cat named Tomato. And of course, as this is pre-recorded, I am possibly dead at this point. I'm not really certain on that, so I'm going to go ahead and ask future me to confirm either way through the questions. And we'll just hope I'm not a ghost. Regardless, I do a lot of tweeting over there on the Twitters and write on my blog here, chriskent.com, so feel free to check those out. All right, let's go. So today we're going to talk about list formatting and magic. However, this is more of a getting started talk, so this will be an introduction to what column formatting is and view formatting. I'm going to show you, why you would want to do it and how you do it, along with some resources to make that even easier. And we'll round things off with some developer guidance. So if you're an architect or developer and you're wondering when would I use this versus say something like the SharePoint framework, we'll cover that here as well. So list formatting. The modern list view, or if you go to Microsoft Lists and you create a new list, a lot of those can sometimes look a little too much like just a spreadsheet in a browser. So what can we do about that, right? And that's where list formatting comes in. It's going to allow you to quickly and easily to really make things a lot easier to use. For instance, instant meaning. So the idea of instant meaning is when I come to this list, it should make more sense than just a wall of text across rows and columns. So one of the things you could do, for instance, is if you've got like a task list, instead of a yes, no for complete, you can turn that into check boxes, right? It makes it very obvious that it's a task to complete, just to make it much more obvious what's happening. You could also do cool things like when the due date's past due, you could turn that red. You can also make stuff look really nice. So you can incorporate all the themes, whether that's the, all the preset themes or the dark themes, or even your custom themes. And if you, depending on how you do that, when corporate decides they need to set a whole new set of branding guidelines, your formats are going to look just nice with those. And of course, we're using all the same classes and icons that Microsoft is using, so it's going to look very nice along with everything else in SharePoint Online or Microsoft Teams or Microsoft Lists or wherever it is we're displaying these. And you can also do really cool things like when I come to this list, all of the items that are assigned to me, Chris Kent, are highlighted in blue right there. Whereas when someone like Dan Gump shows up, all the items assigned to him are highlighted in blue. That way I can customize the experience per user. All right, I can also do cool things like, instead of just a percentage of complete, I could show a dynamic progress bar. Maybe I want to show that as a pie chart, or maybe I want to show that as a gauge. All right, all these are options for us, which can really make our list much easier to understand. Now, before we really jump into things, I want to call out our list formatting repo over in GitHub. It is full of 100+ samples across column and view formatting. You don't have to install anything. You can cut and paste right in the browser, right into your list. It's very easy to use, and everything I'm going to show you today is in fact a sample that's available to you. So you can go over there, you can grab that and start tweaking it, or just using it as is. They're all free. So let's talk about what is column formatting. When you first go to format a column, you go to the column menu and you say format this column, you're going to be presented with some of these design mode wizards. So this is something that Microsoft has provided for several different column types. They all get this conditional formatting, but really it's just a series of rules and formats. So for instance, we take a look at one for like dates. If you click that edit styles, you're going to see they've gone ahead and suggested 3 different rules for you. So if it's before today, if it is today, or if it's after today, you can apply a color to it. Right, it makes it very obvious. Well, those colors, by the way, they look great in dark mode and everything else, so they're a great way to go. However, they don't really match the theme colors, but maybe you want to do a little further than that, right? That's when you click this More Styles button down here, and you're going to see you can actually really get in there and do things like apply icons or borders. You want to bold it, change the font color, all that stuff based on these rules. Really, really powerful, and at any time, you can then take that as a starter, or if you want to take some of the samples we've put together, you can jump over to this advanced mode and just paste that JSON right in there. So when I say JSON, that means JavaScript Object Notation. Sounds a lot scarier than it is. In this context, it has nothing to do with JavaScript. It's really just text. So we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. But for now, that's kind of how everything's stored. and those design mode wizards are going to generate that for you. But if you want to put your JSON in directly, you can do it in the field settings, or you can use that format this column menu. You just paste it right there, and everything is stored with the field. That's a site column. You apply it there. Anywhere you use that site column across your site collection, that same format's going to show up. So you can have that due date, and no matter where people put it in their list, it's going to turn red when it's past the current date, which is awesome. It also means that it's going to support all of your standard tools if you're using site scripts or PnP remote provisioning. All of that's going to be fully supported as well. So let's go ahead and take a look at some column formatting. Here we've got a pretty standard list. We have a title column, and we've got the severity column, which is just a choice column here. Now if I come in here and I choose the column and I go to column settings and format this column, we can see those design modes we talked about. So for choice columns, we've got 3. And for this case, I'm just going to choose choice pills. So if I choose that, you can see I'd automatically get colors assigned, and it looks like that nice new pill format. Now I can go a little further. I can hit this edit styles here. Let's say for in progress, I actually don't want that to be a color at all, right? So we'll just make that clear. And in fact, I want to add some icons here. So I click on this and I go down to more styles. And say for in progress, let's add this nice trending up icon. And you can see that automatically shows up over there. We go back and we say for done, let's add an icon for that one as well. We'll add a check mark. And we'll go back to in review. And on this one, we'll add an icon as well. Let's see, let's do that error. Nice info label there. Go down to has issues and we'll add one there. And again, with has issues, we'll just do the triangle warning. And finally, we'll do blocked. And for blocked, we'll do this nice X here. So if we save that, we see everything is in place, and it all just looks great. And so that's a much better looking list, especially if I've got multiple of these. You can see that design mode was really great. I never had to see any kind of that JSON or anything else we talked about. Now, if I come in here and I go to column settings and I edit, you'll actually see that these are fully integrated here with the edit choices panel. So if I add a new choice, so let's say if I wanted to say canceled, right? So I want a new status of canceled. I can pick the color right here. So in this case, we'll pick like a gray. That's nice. We'll save that. Let's go ahead and add an item. Right, so we'll just add a new item here. We'll call it terrible idea. And we'll say it's going to be canceled. So even in the quick edit, we can see that things are being applied. We'll exit the quick edit. So I've got that. Now I wanted to add an icon to that. Right, so I go to column settings, format this column. I can edit styles. You can see it automatically picked up on my new choice column here. So just like before, I go into more styles. And in this case, say for canceled, we want to add thumbs down. We're going to have the dislike icon. We'll just save that. So very straightforward, very easy. You can see it's a wizard here. Kind of put this all together. It's awesome, but it is kind of an on-rails experience, right? So if we want to see what can we do going a little further beyond that, right? So let's take a look over here. Let's go over to our classic Warrior Horses site. We've got a things list, and we go over here. We can see we've got several formats applied, right? We've got that checkbox we mentioned before. We're showing multiple people in this face pile where we show the first 3, but if there's more than 3, then we're going to go in here. We're going to put the +3. You can see we've got the hover card showing up here, so we can see all the details there. We've got a due date that's showing in red, and that's awesome, right? So these are all formats that are coming from our samples repo, and in fact, what if we don't really like this progress bar and we want to go a little further than that? Well, if we head over there, our list formatting repo is divided into column samples and view samples. If we click into column samples and we scroll down here, we'll go down to number and gauge. We'll click on that JSON file. We'll just grab it right here in the browser. We're going to highlight everything. Then we're going to right click and we're going to copy. And we're going to head back over to our site. We'll column menu, column settings, format this column. And I'm just going to take what's there, copy over it, and I'm going to paste what I just copied. I'm going to hit preview on that. And wow, now we've got a brand new gauge. I didn't have to write any of this, and it just works, right? It shows me exactly how progress is going here. So very awesome, very engaging. So here we've got a couple more examples. For instance, we're detecting the first part of an international phone number to display the correct country code flag. Here we have a multi-choice field. Generally, when you pick those, right, it goes into a comma-separated list, but it's in the order that they got picked, which makes it pretty hard if you're just trying to scan that list for exactly who wanted beer or who wanted juice. All right, so by putting here in this kind of table format, we can see that very easily. In this case, we've actually built these interactive buttons as columns here. These can do all the things you can do before. So generally, if I want to edit an item, right, I either right-click and select Edit, or I click it here and I click Edit. Or I could instead just include a button right here that's just Edit Action. And these are all awesome, but the most powerful one of all is this flow action. So if you want to launch a Power Automate flow, you can just click on this. It'll actually launch the flow panel here. You'll see that it loads the information from Power Automate right here. So we've got the title, the owner, and we've got the description here. And then through the format, I've actually customized this panel. I've set a custom title and a custom button, and I can even decide which flow I wanted to execute for this item. In general, what you have to do is come to Automate. You'll see there's nothing there, so it's not super obvious to users. But if I come down here, and I select an item, I go to Automate, suddenly I have this Emphasize It flow. And that's okay, but what if I've got multiple flows depending on the status? By using formatting, I can decide exactly which flow this should launch, and then I can even customize that panel. All right, so we can see if I go to Column Settings and format this column, you can actually see it right here. So if instead of the button saying do it, the run flow button text will now say wowee. And we'll just save that. We'll close this format. And now when we launch this, we can see now the button says wowee. So this allows us to really make things much easier. Your users don't have to know what flow is or Power Automate or anything else. This is how they're going to launch whatever action you want them to launch at this stage for that list item. In this case, we'll go ahead and run that. All right, so when that ran, behind the scenes, all it did was add an exclamation mark to the title column. And when it did that, we have a format set up here to automatically turn the title bold. And we actually have a view format, which we'll talk about in just a moment, that's adding a row class that makes the whole thing blue. You'll notice we didn't refresh the list. We didn't do anything else. As the list item got updated behind the scenes, format was reapplied, which is pretty awesome. All right. Now we've seen column formats in action. Let's take a look at view formatting. Similar to column formatting, when you first go into Format a View, you're going to present with some design mode options. There's just a couple for now, but there are more on the way. And you can do almost the exact same types of things, except there's no icons available here. View formatting is a superset of column formatting. And that means that everything you can do in column formatting, all the same syntax and everything else, you can do in view formatting as well. There's just a few extra bells and whistles. Now you apply this directly to views, so if you go to that view menu, you can go down and you select Format Current View, and you'll be presented with that panel. Now first you'll see the design mode, but you can click that advanced mode and paste JSON directly there from our samples repo. Now unlike column formatting that's stored with the fields, these are stored with the views themselves, which is really, really powerful, which means you can have multiple view formats for the same list. So you could have, a dashboard for management, along with a tracking list for employees, all using that same list data with completely different formats applied as needed. While you can use this in conjunction with column formatting if you're just doing some of those row classes like we saw with the rows that were highlighted for the current assigned person, if you use the row format style, it's going to override any of your column formats. So let's take a look at the kind of two flavors of view formatting. The first is row class. You're going to apply classes to each row. So these are a set of predefined classes that can be applied conditionally across all the rows. So you're going to use that to add a border or set the whole thing a certain color based on whatever is going on inside that list item. But if you use a row format, that will override using a row class, and now you're responsible for the full rendering of the row, which is both pretty scary. You're in the deep end now, but it's also extremely powerful because you can control everything there. Now, alongside that, you'll see this tiles or gallery view. We've long seen this in the document library. Now, this can be done in addition to your row class and row formats, or it can be done completely by itself. You can even set it as the default display for a view, which is really, really powerful. This allows you to view your items as tiles. Fortunately, coming very soon, there's the Tile Designer. So the Tile Designer will allow you to select which columns you want to display, if you want to show the labels, you want to show previews of images, and so on, and reorder very easily without ever having to touch any of this kind of format. So let's take a look at some view formats. We've got a standard list here with lots of columns and several rows, and we'd like to make this a little easier to read. So if we go up to All Items and we go down to Format Current View, we're going to see we've got a nice design mode wizard here, alternating row styles. Pick that and you can see automatically I've got those nice shades on every other row. I can click Edit Row Styles and I can change whatever color I want that to be. We'll make that a nice blue. And if I save that, close this, you can actually see that as I sort things, it continues to do every other row. Pretty awesome. Here we have another list. This is kind of your classic classifieds list, and this is okay, right? You got the information here, but what if we can make this a little more interactive? Go up to here, we check our view. We've got this view here, which makes it much more obvious what's going on. We can click on items, and see the details, and we've got ourselves a miniature application. We've hidden the list headers and disabled selection, but we've still provided things to delete or even share these items directly inside the view format. Here we've got another list with a lot of information in it about individuals and contacts, and we can see we can have a nice view format here called cards. And in this case, not only are we showing individuals' contact information, providing buttons to edit those, we have a map showing up here. Information is showing conditionally and letting us launch into that. And it's a much nicer, cleaner way to look at this. And in fact, this is a responsive design. But on this same list, because view formats apply to the view, we can actually have another format. So in this case, we've applied the birthday format, and we're using that same information to display it in a completely different way. Here you've got a classic FAQ list for frequently asked questions. And this is okay to read, right? You got your question, you've got your answer, but this would be a lot nicer if we could provide some formatting. If we apply a full row formatter, now we can see we're making this much more obvious. What are the questions and what are the answers? Here's another list where we're commemorating those that have gone on ahead of us. And we provided that tiles view. So when we switch to tiles, you can see that same information is now displayed in a much more dynamic way. If we want to make that the default, all we need to do is save this view. Here's another example. We've got a pretty simple list, but we'd like to display this in a much more dynamic way. So we've applied a format that takes over the entire view and provides some animation and additional details. And we show conditional flow buttons that can affect our dashboard as things update behind the scenes. Now that we've seen examples of both column formatting and view formatting, let's get crazy, let's get nuts. Let's write our own formats. Let's take a look at what's involved in that. I highly recommend heading over to our GitHub repo for list formatting. 100 plus samples there. In fact, if you go to this link, you'll be taken to our sample gallery. And that sample gallery has not only guidance on how to use the samples themselves, provides listing of those samples by category, by author, by field type, or even by operator. By far the best way to learn how to make your own custom format is to take a look at all the great work that's already been put out there by other people. It's all for free. Grab it, copy it, paste it, start tweaking and mashing up the various formats. You'll find that looking at what other people have already written is the easiest way to understand how to write your own. Now, in column formatting and view formatting, there's very good support across the board for all the field types. You can use those. However, there are a couple you can't reference, whether that's in view formatting or column formatting. The biggest one of those is managed metadata. But there are a couple other ones as well. So if you turn on ratings for a list, for instance, you can't get all of those field types necessarily. By and large, everything in your list can be referenced inside your formats, and you can make decisions based on them or display individual properties such as like the hyperlink. You can display the description or the URL. You can grab the person, get their email or the display name as needed. Now, we talked about JSON before. That's that JavaScript object notation. We're not going to go into depth here. We have a video on the YouTube channel that goes into depth on this. Gives this crash course. The main thing I want to point out here is everything you're seeing there, you can certainly write in Visual Studio Code or Visual Studio or whatever IDE makes you feel better, but you don't need to. You can write it directly in Notepad. This is pretty straightforward stuff. You got squiggly brackets, you got square brackets, and you got things in quotes with colons in between. This will start to make a little more sense as we get in here. But JSON isn't scary despite its scary name. So an important concept to understand with formatting is how it works behind the scenes. So when you go to that column menu and you go into column settings, you go to format this column, and you take one of the samples from our samples repo and you're going to cut and paste that directly into the panel. What's happening is that format is being evaluated on a row by row basis. So you get all the power of being able to reference the other columns as long as they're part of the view for an individual list item. But you can't reference previous rows or next rows. But things work very well in terms of scrolling down. So as you continue to scroll and you have that infinite scroll, the formats are reapplied on a row-by-row basis. And in fact, as list items are updated behind the scenes, your format is reapplied as well, which can have the effect of having a nice live dashboard. But it's also extremely performant this way. I've created formats across 100 plus columns with thousands of rows, and I've not seen any kind of slowdown when I run this in the browser, which is awesome. So how does it really work, right? So we've looked at this JSON stuff. How does that really map to a format? On the left there, we have an actual format for column formatting. This is what that column's ended up looking like. It just happened that that list item's value was Y's polar bear. Behind the scenes, it's creating 3 HTML elements, creating a div and 2 spans inside of it. You can actually see that generated HTML right here. So let's take a look. How does this really get built? So this first line is the schema. That's helpful if you are using something like Visual Studio Code, and you'll see it in all the samples, but it is not necessary. It's a completely optional field. I leave it out all the time. But first up, we want to say, what is our parent container? In this case, we're going to say the element type is a div. We just want a big box. Then we want to say, let's make that big box have a class of sp-field-severity-severe warning, which really just means that nice pink shade right there. There's a whole set of these classes, which give you kind of those standard colors and standard pieces that SharePoint Online is using across the board. So now we've got a big box with a pink background. Now we want to add some sub-elements, so we put those inside our children. And so our first one is just a span, which is a tiny box, and we want to put an icon in there. Now there's 2,000 plus icons, and all we have to do to get them to show up is write their name right there. So in this case, we're using the warning icon, which is where that triangle with an exclamation point comes from. And now we're adding some style on here, so we just want some padding on the left. Because we've got that background, we don't want that icon right up on the edge. And then we add another span, and this one, we're going to put some text content. And this is where we're going to see our first placeholder token. It's this @current_field. And what that means is, whatever the value is for the current field, just swap that in here. So in this case, it's Y's polar bear on this row, so just put that in there for the text. And again, we're going to put it padding left to 4 pixels because we don't want that icon right up there. So we mentioned this idea of placeholder tokens, or I like to call them magic strings. And the whole idea is, there's a bunch of these, and you're just going to take whatever that token is, and you're going to swap it out for the value. So this is going to allow you to access other field values. That's what that field name represents up there, including their sub-properties. And you can also have access to certain kinds of context, like things about the window, the size of the window, or absolute URL for the current web. Placeholder tokens allow us to specify values we don't yet know, such as me, which is just the email address of the current user, which is how we can compare that to the values within the list item. Now there are also expressions, and you can get really fancy with these. We're not going to go into details with these right now, just because there's so many. But if you're watching this as a video, just go ahead and pause if you want to take a look at this. Or you can take a look at the slides. Those are available to you as well. But all of this is also covered in the documentation. And really, the whole idea here is to show you that you can do all sorts of really cool stuff, and you can get really creative with this. So you want to do some math? Bam! There's a bunch of math stuff you can do. Now, if you want to do things conditionally, you want to specify some if statements, right? You want to show, the color is red if it's this way, or you want to show the color is orange if it's this way. That's where these if statements going to come in, and you've got all these comparisons, less than, greater than, along with ors and ands. If you want to make, multiple if statements, you can just nest those inside of each other. There's also a ton of conversion operators. The values come back exactly the type they are. So if it's a date time, it's come back as a date time. But if you want to convert that right to a locale string, so it shows up correctly for Europe versus the US. If you use that to locale date string, if the person viewing it is from the US, they're going to see the month, day, year. If you're from Europe, you're going to see the day, month, year. Right, so it's a nice way to not have to worry about those types of things inside your format and know that it's going to show up the right way that you were expecting to for the user that's using your format. There's also a ton of these text operators. All right, so you could do things like inspecting your text to see if it ends or starts with something. You could even pad things. So if you want to set a fixed format and you want to add, a number of zeros on the end so it all lines up exactly the way you want, you can do all that. Maybe you want to make your list items seem like they're shouting. Well, you can use that to uppercase. As you can see, there's a lot of opportunity here, and you can combine these all within a single expression as needed. There's also some advanced operators if you want to work with some multi-choice columns and so on. And of course, there's even more operators, such as if you want to pull out, say, just the month part of the date. So you could do things like checking what quarter you're in. Say maybe your fiscal year starts in June. So you want to see is it June, July, or August, and you want to say that's quarter 1. You can add that custom logic just by using the getMonth operator. But you can even do some more advanced and awesome stuff. So hover cards. Right now, out of the box, if you hover out person field, it's going to show you all those extra details. You can do that too. So you can attach a person card to your own format. You could have multiple. So if you're showing multiple people, you can have multiple hover cards show up on the elements you want. You can also make your own custom hover cards. So you could use that for, like, say, a custom drop-down or a light box. All sorts of really cool stuff you can do there. The live list updates we mentioned a couple of times. The idea behind the scenes, as list items get updated, your format is reevaluated. So you can leave up a dashboard of things, and as people are updating them or flows are running and updating things, you'll see those updates in real time. And then, of course, there's row actions as well, where you can do things like the delete button or share or edit props, all those types of actions. But the most powerful one of all is you can launch a flow, and you can even do that conditionally. So let's say you wanted to launch a flow based on the status of an item. You may want to launch flow A for a certain status, launch flow B for another status. You can do that and really help direct your users into what they should be doing. You can even customize the panel that shows up. So it doesn't just say run flow. You can say get approval or add to CRM. Whatever makes sense. The whole idea is to make this as user-friendly for what makes sense for your organization as possible. Now, there are a number of free tools out there that can help you with this, along with, of course, the documentation and our samples repo. There's a website called flycon.io. If you go there, it's going to help you search those 2,000 plus icons. That's a lot of icons to sort through. Things are categorized and tagged, so you can easily find exactly what you're looking for. There's also a nice Chrome extension called SP Formatter. If you install that, it'll provide IntelliSense directly in the format panel and auto-completion, which is very, very helpful as you're learning. And then there's a PnP column formatter. This is a web part provided by PnP that allows editing and some wizards for column formats. Okay, so that's really cool. There's lots of stuff you can do, but when should you use this versus custom development? So let's take a look. So primarily we're going to take a look at column formatting versus a SharePoint framework field customizer. So if we take a look at it, the first part is customization. If you want to do conditional style formatting, right, it's supported in both. Have at it. If you want to take actions, we mentioned there's some very specific actions that are on Rails for column formatting, but with field customizer, you can do anything you want. Visualizations, column formatting is primarily static visualizations. However, you can do the hover card, you can do some hover styles, but really that's about it. You're not going to get real animations unless you want to stick an animated GIF in there. Field customizer, do whatever you want. Page context, you've got some page context with column formatting, right? So you got the now, me, window, current web. With field customizer, you're going to have the full context. So if you want to get extreme details about the list you're on, the view ID, all that kind of stuff, you're going to want to go field customizer. JavaScript, nope for column formatting. Custom CSS classes, nope. Interactivity, nope. Outside of some minor actions you can run, right? Field customizer, yep. So why are we recommending this? Well, the main point is the developer is not truly required for column formatting because you can just copy and paste these. But the biggest thing is that anyone with designer permissions can add these to their modern list views, which is really, really powerful. You don't have to go through a change management board. If someone decides that now they don't want that due date to be red, they want it to be chartreuse. Is that a color? Sure. You want it to be that color? That's a simple update, right? You don't have to redeploy. You don't have to package things up. You don't have to hire an expensive developer or get some of IT's time in 6 months. You can just do it and go. So 90% of all list customization use case can be covered by column formatting itself. And another 5% is covered by view formatting. For everything else, use SharePoint framework. Lastly, I want to make sure you're aware, I do a demo about every 2 weeks, so every other Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. We also record them and put them on YouTube if you're busy during that time. But it's a recurring list formatting tips and tricks. So we've been doing this for well over a year and a half now. Covered lots of things. All of these are available on YouTube, so it's a deep dive on very, very specific topics, or it's an introduction to new features that are out there. Join us for those calls if you can. You can ask questions directly in the chat. Lots of people are there to answer them, including me. But it's a great learning opportunity. Plus, there's usually a lot of other cool demos as well. Be sure to fill out the survey. The link there is aka.ms/PnPVCFeedback. And thank you very much. All right, that's it for me. I'm out. Peace.